Welcome to the Cash Flow Project Podcast. Are you looking to better your financial situation by increasing your cash flow? Too busy to hunt for real estate deals or don't know where to start? Then you're in the right spot. Join us as we dive in and talk about investing for cash flow using multifamily real estate.
Welcome to the Cash Flow Project Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Fierros with Tri-City Equity Group. Today, we've got somebody who's in the industry and the trades on the show. I'm excited to kind of talk shop with Bob, but we've got Bob Brown. So Bob's known as the Dirt Whisperer, which is an amazing name. I love that. He's an esteemed foundation industry expert with over 35 years of experience. He's renowned for his deep understanding of foundations and his ability to address complex issues with ease. He's also an author. He's got our highly acclaimed book, Foundation Repair Secrets. So we'll talk a little bit about that here on the show, but we're also he's going to help us to navigate how to protect yourself and save thousands. This is obviously relevant if you're a homeowner, if you're an investor. Eventually, you're going to run across some type of property with some issues with foundations. So Bob's going to help us learn how to not be fearful of that and see how we can help to use that as an advantage for us. But Bob, excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm really loving being here.
Yeah, no, I greatly appreciate you hopping on and sharing with me and with the audience. But for those of us that may not be familiar with you and kind of your background, give us a little bit of your backstory. How'd you get involved with property, with foundations? How'd you become to be known as the Dirt Whisperer? Like I said, I love that.
Yeah. Well, I graduated from Arizona State University back when they had dinosaurs. And I graduated in architecture and in finance. And I ended up going into the concrete repair business initially because that's kind of how I worked my way through college. I just did concrete repairs. And I built a company, and eventually I expanded to include foundation repair. Now, when I first expanded into foundation repair, I had no clue. I really did. When you go into that business, you have a supplier, and that single source supplier gives you exclusive rights to his product in that area in exchange for your being very loyal to him and only buying products from him. And they train all the contractors. They train them how to do the diagnosis, the marketing, the sales, the everything. And so I learned initially from my supplier. Now I found out later that that maybe is not the greatest thing in the world. And we'll talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. Now I would love to any insider details into kind of that side of the business. A lot of times, typically for us as investors, we'll kind of be on the back end of that. And obviously, if you're listening to the show and you've been involved at all in real estate, no doubt we've had some challenges dealing and working with contractors. So yeah, I'm definitely excited to hear some of your insight. But yeah, you've obviously been in the business a long time. In terms of, I love talking to people that have been both working as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a real estate owner for extended periods, because it's easy for us to get caught up in, oh, this is the way that the market is today, the way that things are working today. That's just the way it's always been. And it's like, no, it's all cyclical. It's like, and I'm sure in your years, you've seen kind of different challenges over the years and whatnot. So yeah, I'm definitely excited to kind of get your take on that. But yeah, what would have been some challenges that you've seen, let's say, just as a business owner that you've noticed over the years?
Well, I mean, for me, growing my company from just me to over 100 people, and I sold the business 2 years ago. And when I sold it, I sold a foundation repair company. I also had a forensic engineering company. And that all kind of went part and parcel. And so there, in the process of growing a company from nothing to 100 people, you got to reinvent yourself about 7 times. And so that's the biggest challenge, I think, is learning as you grow the business. Okay, what's my role now? I really shouldn't be out working with my hands in the field anymore. Okay, what's my role now? And then as you build your company, you discover that there's different needs and you have to fill those needs as they arise.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I love that. And it's a big transition. So for those people that are kind of working in the business to being able to work on the business, step away from doing the thing, I feel like entrepreneurs, a lot of times that's a difficult process. We want to make sure that, okay, hey, this is our baby, especially if you've grown it to any significant size, or you understand, well, nobody can understand it as best as I can. Well, that's probably true, but there may be somebody out there with a different skill set that can help to maximize, or if nothing else, you're just not the one that's doing everything, right? So
exactly. I mean, so probably if you're trying to do everything, you're not going to succeed. It's not going to work. Maybe if you're a one person company, yeah, great. But Much beyond that, no.
Yeah. Well, and that's impressive too, because if you had 100 employees, most businesses don't grow to that size. Right. And so that's a sizable company. So even just kind of managing that, juggling all that, just to your point earlier, yeah, you've got to learn how to, okay, I've got to put on a different hat for each facet of the business, which again, that's a challenge because then now you've got to say as an entrepreneur, well, I'm not good at that.
Right. Right. Recognize what you're good at and hire for what you're not good at.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, no, definitely understand that. Well, how did you feel the last few years? I know you said you kind of sold, and it sounds like probably you sold at a good time. How did you see even, I know you're based in Phoenix. How did you see even, let's say, your market change over the last, or since you started? I know a lot of changes have happened in the last 10, 20 years. Must have been even more if you were working primarily in that market over your entire career. So what kind of changes did you see that kind of necessitated you kind of tweaking your business, modifying your business to fit the needs of the market?
Well, I mean, I lived through 3 recessions, and definitely the worst was the 2007. And I probably paid myself $12 an hour between 2011 and 2016, just while I was recovering from all that. It was definitely a monster. And we went from 8 million to 2 million overnight just in that period of time. So it was definitely a challenge. And again, you got to readapt, you got to think, you got to figure out what to do to survive. Make sure you have plenty in the war chest to cover for those times. Otherwise, you are out of business. It's too many people, they let that money burn a hole in their pocket. And next thing, hard times come. And guess what? You got problems, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's a challenge. And again, most small businesses fail, and it's for a variety of reasons. It can be the specific market that you went into. It can be your operations. It could be people not identifying, let's say, oh, okay, my weakness is XYZ, and never addressing that. Could also be things out of your control, just like how you said, well, I didn't predict that. I don't have any hand on what the economy is doing necessarily, but obviously there's different ways that you can try to navigate that as best as possible. But
for sure, there's known unknowns and there's unknown unknowns. And that's why you have a rainy day fund, because there's going to be unknowns.
No, that right there is wisdom. The young entrepreneur doesn't say, okay, well, what do I need that for? We're in hyper growth mode and things are going to be blue. The skies are going to be blue forever. Well, that may not always be the case.
Just because you can't see it coming doesn't mean it's not coming.
100%. And then especially coming through, let's say, 2008, these last couple of years have been a real tough stretch for a lot of property owners, a lot of investors. So I know that's been a challenge. So having reserves, right, it's definitely going to be a key. Having a war chest developed basically is going to be a real vital component of any business, especially like that. Like, I know, fill us in and just give us a snapshot. Like, how much equipment? I would imagine you guys have to have a bunch of equipment, depending on
trucks, equipment. Each crew was about $250,000 to $500,000 in equipment, and we would have up to 12 crews. It was quite the undertaking, and you got to manage all that equipment. You got to maintain it. Equipment is when the foundation repair business, equipment is your lifeblood. Well,
for sure.
Obviously, your people have to take care of the equipment. Your people are the most important thing, but if you don't have equipment, you're out of business.
Oh yeah, guaranteed. Now I'm kind of curious too, just to kind of circle back a little bit to kind of an earlier point. I love that you're service-based business. I know that you own property as well. You own commercial assets, rental properties as well. Was it difficult for you to make that transition? Mentally, I feel a lot of people in this, for those of our listeners that may be kind of tuning in, that are maybe working service-based business, either a small business or perhaps they're working actually for somebody else and wanting to step out on their own. Do you have any advice for them to try and make that transition? Is it a skill-based thing solely, or is there a mental kind of
which transition specifically are you talking about?
Well, because you mentioned that you were working for somebody else. Let's say you were contracting for somebody else or working within somebody else's business, and then you ventured out, right? So,
well, I actually always worked for myself. I've always been independent. Wow. But how do you make the transition to invest in properties? Maybe that's one thing that we could look at. A lot of service-based businesses don't do that. They just want to plow everything into their business. And of course, then you've got all your eggs in one basket. My first business property was actually a house. It was the alley in back of my house. And I noticed that there was phone company trucks going in and out of it all the time. I thought, it's kind of weird. That can't be a regular house. And they had a back covered driveway that I wanted to rent from them. They never used it. So I called them and I said, hey, can you rent that out to me? And they said, no, we're going to sell the property. And I'm like, oh, well, how much you want for it? And they said, $13,000. And I'm like, okay, I'll take it. And so I bought it, but it was 4 walls and a ceiling. There was never any plumbing in it. It was never a house. It was a switching station that was designed to look like a house. And so I had to trench plumbing in, put walls in, build it all out completely. Still a good deal as far as I was concerned. And I operated out of that property for 7 or 8 years till I outgrew it. It worked great. And from then, I always invested in properties. Degree in finance was only a few courses different than a degree in real estate. So, as a matter of fact, I even got my license when I graduated. I didn't do anything with it. I think I bought my own house. And that was about it.
Yeah, I was going to say finance is usually one of the prerequisites. If you want to just go, okay, hey, I can go get my license without the prereqs for real estate. So, that's awesome. So yeah, keeping an eye out for opportunity. That's kind of a key thing since you were able to, okay, well, hey, just having your eyes out. I know it's difficult, guys. If you're listening, it's very easy to keep your head down and work just kind of towards and on your business. But Bob had the wherewithal to say, okay, could that be an opportunity? And take a step out, not be scared to pick up the phone, make a phone call and say, hey, could this work for me? Right. So yeah, that's awesome. So very cool. And then you've continued to buy after that, obviously. So
yeah, I did. Whenever I had a little bit extra cash, I'd buy another property. That's just the way it worked with me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that alone is smart. So what I feel like a challenge for a lot of people is, okay, well, hey, just like how you said, they're going to continue to pour the money into their business. And that's great. Of course, do that. But make sure you peel off a little portion of it. And hey, let's also continue to develop some, let's say, more passive income streams. Have your money working for you. That's something that we talk about a lot, all the time is, okay, well, hey, I want active sources of income, but then I want to take that and put it into positions of passive income.
The interesting thing is, over the years, I invested enough so that when I sold my businesses, it was actually equal in value to what I was getting for the sale of my business. Now, that's an interesting thought process because a lot of business owners, when they get ready to sell, they're all freaked out and nervous, and it's the most important thing in their life. And for me, I was able to put it in perspective and go, you know what? I'm going to take my time with this. I'm going to do it right. I got 2 bidders bidding against each other. Okay, I got it right. I think I ended up with a 8 times EBITDA, which is like unheard of. And part of the reason I was able to do that is because I was like, hey, so what? If it doesn't go through, it's not the end of the world for me. I got just as much money elsewhere. It doesn't matter that much.
That's actually really powerful because that really helps you to make decisions, I think, for the best in terms of your business, your employees. That helps you to make the right moves. When you have cash flow and you've got alternate sources of income, again, you're not stressed out necessarily if your core business is not doing as well. That gives you more flexibility, more wiggle room.
It does.
More options.
You know, I had a professor at ASU, Dr. Wilk, beloved, dead now, but really great guy. He said something I never forgot. He said, everybody has to decide in life whether you want to eat more or whether you want to sleep more, because you can't have it both ways.
Yeah, that is good. Well, Bob, tell us a little bit about your book. I know you've got your book, Foundation Repair Secrets. Fill us a little bit on the backstory. What was the impetus for writing the book? Was this like a passion project for you, or was it, hey, you know what, I've got some stuff to share? How did that work out?
Very much a passion project. So as I mentioned, when I first got into the business, I kind of just took all my cues from my supplier, and that's a bit myopic. And I had, because I have a degree in architecture, I had a lot of engineering friends, and I would go to lunch with them, and I learned a lot more. And they pointed me in the right directions, and I studied and learned and grew. And I started to realize that there's some problems in this industry. Basically, what we have is salesmen going around masquerading as engineers. They're going to people's homes or to a commercial property, and they are diagnosing it. They diagnose soil problems, which is the domain of geotechnical engineers. And then they design solutions to a structural components of a building, and that's a structural engineer. And they're doing all of that without a license. And they're doing it on a commission basis, which is a conflict of interest. So I started realizing, oh man, this is not right. So I started speaking up. Of course, nobody wanted to hear it. Hey, we're making good money. What are you bugging us for? And that's why I started up a forensic engineering company, because I didn't want to be a part of that. I wanted to have engineers do the diagnosis and design the repair plans and give it back to the salesperson, who can then go sell what the engineer designed to the homeowner. And the homeowner appreciated that because they knew that it was coming from a non-biased source. Well, it was a great model. I tried to get other people to do it. I got very few takers. There's a few out there, but not very many. And when I sold the business, they basically canned the whole engineering department because that's not the way they did business. So I'm thinking to myself, all right, well, there's the proof in the pudding. There's some serious change needed in this. So in this industry. So my goal is to help property owners and real estate professionals realize that never rely on a foundation repair salesman to give you your diagnosis. You should always pay a little bit of money and get it from a geotechnical or forensic geotechnical engineer. It's kind of like, here's what I say. Hey, if you were really sick, picture this, and you go to the doctor, and you think it's a doctor, he turns around and on the back of his coat, it says Acme Drug Company. Now, would you go to a pharmaceutical rep for free to get a diagnosis for a serious problem? Or would you pay good money to go to a real doctor and get a real diagnosis? And that's kind of the way it is in the business. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, no, that's good for sure. That's another topic for another podcast, but yeah, no, for sure though. And that's a great way to kind of look at it and help people to avoid potential, like you said, conflicts of interest. Hey, are these people really looking out for my best interest? Are they just trying to feed work directly to their other business, or if their perceived business, right? So yeah, that's a big deal. Anytime we're talking about foundation, we're not talking about, oh, okay, well, hey, we're just gonna paint and we're gonna do some fresh hardware, but something that doesn't affect so many other components of any structure. I mean, if you're dealing on foundation, I mean, my goodness, I mean, it's typically a major undertaking because you're potentially dealing with plumbing repairs and depending on how bad it. I mean, I'm sure you've got stories too. I'd love to hear some.
Oh yeah,
I've seen some pretty bad houses and buildings in need of leveling, in need of repair. So yeah, we're talking about
it's pretty rare though. Honestly, really, I mean, that's one of the myths of the industry is that you've got cracks and you've got movement. You need underpinning right away, or you could have serious structural problems. Well, most of that is baloney. Most of these problems are not going to result in any kind of serious concerns, and you can get an opinion. You can monitor over time. You have lots of options. You don't have to rush and spend money right away. It's just not the way it really needs to be. But I've seen a few. I mean, I saw a tilt-up building that had sunk 15 and a half inches, and it was sinking at a half inch a month. Of course, it was built over a landfill, but that building was in danger of collapsing. And I've seen maybe 2 houses in 35 years, but that's not very many, really.
Yeah. No, I'd say the same. I mean, we here in Hawaii, of course, and that's the thing to remember too, guys. Like every market is going to be different. Like it's going to have different soil. They're going to have different build standards. So what Bob and I are talking about, and obviously he's seen a ton of different things there in the Phoenix market. Well, you know what? Their soil is going to be different there compared to what I would see here in Hawaii, or what you might see in wherever market that you're working on stuff. When I was based in Texas and looking at things in Houston, my goodness, and we would see stuff all the time. They have a lot of flooding issues. And so there's so many different factors that can contribute to, let's say, structural movement. And so that's something that you need to be connected with, let's say somebody like Bob locally that can help to guide you through that process. But
well, to your point, that's exactly right. So, for instance, Houston is very wet, been wet for millennia. The advice that if you were a geotech would give to a homeowner would be to put a soaker around your house with a timer and water it once a day. Now, you would never do that in a million years in Phoenix. That would just be like the most horrible thing you could ever do in Phoenix. So it does depend on your market. And one of the things that I've done is I've got a website called foundationrepairsecrets.com, and I've got a directory in there of engineers that in every state you can call on to get advice.
Awesome. I mean, that's a great resource because I can't tell you, let's say on the inspection side of the business, when I'm dealing with stuff, or if we're looking at property out of state, which of course we buy, I can tell you how many times it's like, okay, who do I know in that local market that can help out in this situation? Because a lot of times, even if you just get that second opinion, just to, like Bob's talking about, hey, maybe you had somebody that came out and let's say you're looking at a rehab project and they already have a bid for XYZ, some type of foundation repair. You know what? Get a second look on that, because it's depending on how bad it is. You definitely want to have a second set of eyes, a second opinion on okay, what are the issues that we're really working with here? I want a third party.
To that point, here's what happens typically. You're going to love this. So you call up one foundation repair company and they say, oh yeah, you need 12 piers over here. And the other one comes out and says, no, you need 13 over here. And the other one comes out and says, no, you need 25 all the way around. I mean, how as a non-professional are supposed to figure out who's right? I mean, it's impossible. You're not in that business. And so that's another reason to call a good, neutral, unbiased geotechnical engineer. And you know what? Yeah, it's not going to be free. The other investigations, and I say investigations loosely because they're just basically sales pitch kind of masquerading as investigations. But really, you're going to get that money back because when that engineer gives you a plan that says, bid these 14 piers right here, and now you go bid that apples to apples with everybody, they're going to sharpen their pencils and you're going to get that money back.
Yeah, so definitely key. So I mean, that alone, and just having somebody to contact around the nation or whatever your market that you are. And if not else, if maybe they're not in the market that you need, okay, well, you can still hit up somebody who's close by. They might have a referral for you or something along those lines.
That's exactly right. And if you do find somebody that's not on my list, email me because I'll add them. I mean, they're on there for free. I don't charge. I'm just trying to help people.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, what are some quick tips, Bob, that maybe a homeowner or an investor or somebody who owns commercial property, what are some quick things that they can kind of look out for just to potentially ward off having problems? Say, okay, well, hey, you know what, Bob, I get it. Sounds great. I'm not dealing with any issues right now. I own a bunch of property, but hey, is there something that I can be on the lookout for, right? Is there something I can do as kind of a preventative thing to help me to avoid problems?
Yeah. So what do you look for? Well, to look for, you're going to look for, most importantly, cracks in walls. Everybody gets cracks in floors. There's two kinds of concrete that's cracked and concrete that's gonna crack. So take it with a grain of salt. What I look for is patterns. People call me all the time and say, hey, I have a crack. And I'm like, you have a crack? Unless it's a half-inch wide, a crack doesn't mean anything. But if you have a pattern of cracks in the walls, cracks in the floors, maybe your door is pinched. By pinched, I mean on one side of the door, it's an inch, and on the other side, it's pinched. Or a window. People don't think about windows, but windows, vertical sliders do the same thing, top to bottom. And so those are things to look for, slopes in the floors. When you have that grouping of patterns together, then it's time to sit up and say, hey, maybe I should get a little bit of advice on this. And typically, the most important thing to remember is changes in moisture. Okay, changes, okay? So if you're in Houston, you don't want to dry it out. If you're in Phoenix, you don't want to get it wet. Or even if you are in Houston, you don't want to have it wet on one side and dry on the other. That creates all kinds of, same thing in Phoenix. Or you want to keep it the same. You want to keep everything what it's used to having. Quite often I would see people, they would do a xeriscape thing and they would cut off all the watering of their lawns and put gravel out there. Next thing you know, those clays are shrinking up. Clays shrink when they dry. They got settlement on the front end of the house where the lawn used to be. That's a change. Okay, so just be cognizant of changes in moisture. Most areas, and I'm not talking the South, Louisiana and Florida and Texas, but other than that, most areas, the name of the game is to try to get water away. A few areas, that's not the name of the game, but the most important thing is be cognizant of changes in moisture.
Yeah, no, that's huge. And I can't tell you how many properties that I've seen, let's say that, for one, that's great. I love that actually, because, and I've considered doing some changes to a property that I have in Texas, kind of for that exact same thing. We're talking about, I'll put it in some xeriscape, and obviously that would implement a big change into that lot. But that would be something I need to be aware. I'm typically will track, okay, well, hey, what kind of, we have a gutter system in place. All right, well, where are those discharge points? Are they discharging directly at foundation walls? We've seen a lot of damage there. Do we have soil erosion? Do we have swales let's say how's the lot slope, let's say in relation to the building? Do we have negative slope? So I'm usually keyed in on looking at stuff like that. But the general environment, I think is actually, that's a good tip. How are we mitigating any type of moisture? How's the lot dealing with moisture in general? And if there's something that we're doing that can impact that. So yeah, no, that's very, very cool. Well, Bob, this is a time on our show where we transition to what we call our fire round. Just a little more brief Q&A, a little bit more lighter, fun questions. That's something you're up for?
Sure, absolutely.
All right, awesome. First question, what is your favorite book recommendation? I mean, other than your own, of course.
Well, I'm a big follower of Peter Diamandis, and Forbes named him one of the 50 greatest leaders. And he's got several books that I recommend: Abundance, Bold, and The Future is Faster Than You Think. All of those provide great advice for, hey, what is the future going to look like? I mean, we're all trying to prognosticate. Okay, what's the future going to be like? How can I plan for it? I have a 5-year plan for my business. Well, guess what? If you don't have a plan, if you don't know what's coming up in 5 years, I mean, there's going to be some radical changes that you're not thinking of. The last thing you want to get done is be Kodak. I'm not sure if you know that phrase, being Kodak, but you don't want to have that happen to you.
For sure. I mean, we've seen that time and time over the decades, over the years. There's new technology that you can control what you can control. But there's going to be stuff for sure that you need to keep an eye out on the horizon. We're going to see a lot of disruption, I think, in the next 5, 10, 15 years. If somebody is trying to project, somebody's trying to prognosticate and project what life is going to look like in 15 years. Wow, that's a challenge.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
But you want all the guidance you can get, and Peter's great at that in all of his books.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. That's a great recommendation. All right. Next question. If you had a time machine, you can go back to you when you were 20 years old. What advice would you have for your 20-year-old self?
I guess I would say believe in yourself. A lot of times you're trying to feel your way into this, and you're unsure, and you know what? I'm grateful to wonderful mentors who helped me along the way. Believe in yourself, find great people to help you. I wished I would have figured that out earlier.
All right. Next question. What would you consider your superpower to be?
Probably my creativity. It's kind of weird being a finance major and I hate accounting. I won't do it. But the fact of the matter is, I think my ability to think outside the box and to look things through and to figure out solutions that other people have missed, I think is probably my superpower.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Oh, you said too, you hate accounting. That's great. Know yourself.
Exactly.
Know that that's not your strength, and hire somebody else for that, or somebody to partner with on that side of the business. That's great.
Right.
Awesome. Well, Bob, if our audience wants to get in touch with you, if they want to reach out and they've got some questions, or if they want to get in touch with your book, what's the best way for them to reach out and connect?
Well, the easiest way is my website, foundationrepairsecrets.com. Now you can send a message to me there. You can find me on social media as the Dirt Whisperer. There's a bunch of ways to reach me. That's probably the easiest. And I always respond. I always reach out to people if they have questions. I'm not really doing all this to make money. Honestly, I don't need the money. I've got plenty to retire on many times over. I'm doing this because I want to make the world a better place. So if somebody really has questions or really wants to know something, I'm here to help.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So definitely, you guys, if you have questions, make sure that you reach out to Bob, and you can definitely get his input, or you need somebody in your local area. Like you mentioned, on his site, he's got a directory. So definitely check that out, and that'll help you out along in your real estate journey. But Bob, thank you so much for hopping on with us today.
Yeah,
I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom and your guidance, and appreciate that. And I know I benefited, so I know our listeners did too. So thanks so much. And
Awesome.
we're out in Phoenix. We'll have to circle back with you and see what you got going on.
Absolutely. Would love it.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. Have a great one.
Thank you.
All right. Great conversation with the Dirt Whisperer with Bob Brown. That's a great insight there in terms of foundation and structural components, I'd say, and that part of the business, dealing with contractors and whatnot in the industry. So he's got a cool story. Not many people go from that background of finance into some of the trades, and he's really trying to make a difference in terms of education and helping property owners to be well equipped. Guys, if you're interested in investing with us, you can go to tricityequity.com to learn more about how to do that. Maybe some of our prior deals, prior track record and history. We'd love to be able to connect with you on there. So shoot us a message. If you guys are interested in connecting with us here locally, and you're on island, or maybe you're coming out for a trip or something along those lines, you can definitely connect with us. We have a monthly meetup called Honolulu Multifamily and More. So you can join our Facebook group. You can find us on meetup.com. You can find us on Bigger Pockets, a lot of different sources. We'd love to be able to connect with you, meet you in person. So drop us a line on through charcityequity.com. I'd love to be able to connect with you and key you in onto the next meetup. And of course, if you guys know anybody who is interested in real estate or would find value in the podcast, make sure that you're liking and sharing the episode. We'd love to be able to get the message out to more people, have bigger and better guests on the show. That greatly, greatly helps us out. We really appreciate you guys. Well, that's going to be it for me today, guys. We'll sign off. We'll see you on the next episode. Go out, take some action. Watch out for properties with foundation issues, and maybe get a second opinion if you need one. All right, guys, that's going to be it for today. We'll see you on the next episode. Aloha.